We will be entering part 2 of the lecture, Where Did I Put My Keys Again? Techniques to Improve Your Memory. Again, my name is Matthew Heller, and I will be presenting part 2. I guess you all enjoyed part 1 so much, you are back here looking for more. So, the last thing I went over was a model for how the memory works. And I went over all 3 stages, and that can be reviewed in part 1 if needed. So to begin with part 2, I am going to go over memory changes that occurs with age. So a majority of older people will not face severe memory loss. And what makes memory changing in the elderly? It's the sensory memory that changes. It's the ability to hear the information correctly, the ability to see your surroundings. Your short-term memory capacity remains the same. You're still able to hold the 5 to 7 pieces of information at any one moment. Most difficulties with your memory as you become older is the encoding the information into your long-term memory and your ability to recall. Encoding, which is getting the information from your long-term memory. Many of these people will say, I can't remember what I just read, as they can't get the information from their short-term memory into their long-term memory. And for recall, or retrieving the information on demand, these people will say, I know the name of my medication, but I just can't think of it at this moment. However, their ability to recognize certain information, that remains intact. So it's only the recall that is affected in getting information and remembering information from your long-term memory. Also, as we get older, we get divided attention. It becomes more difficult to pay attention to more than one thing at one time. We get distracted by a variety number of things more easily, such as the radio playing in the background, someone talking in the back, or a doorbell ringing, which may disrupt your concentration on what you were focusing on, and that becomes more easily done than when you were younger. For example, you are giving directions to a lost driver when you hear sirens in the background. You turn to look to see where they were coming from, and you turn back around to the driver and lost track of what you were saying. This is an example of one thought process displacing another thought process in your short-term memory. This is that common experience where you say to yourself, where was I? The amount of information that's held in your short-term memory is very limited, so what you are thinking of is displaced by new information as they come. Another example is when you go to your doctor with several questions in mind that you need to ask him. When he enters the room, you have them very well in mind. Then you start asking the typical health question. You know those questions: do you smoke? Do you do drugs? Are you sexually active? Etc. And by the time you are finally done and ready to ask your question, you find that you can no longer remember them. This is a classic example of a division of attention as you try to remember the thing that you intend to ask the doctor. At that same time, you are answering the question that he is asking you. So keep in mind, if you go to your doctor, go with a written list of questions so you will not have to rely on your memory for such important information. Learning new information takes greater effort on your part as you become older. Much of the new learning that takes place requires a more conscious effort and an intent to learn. So this is paying more particular attention to any one item that you want to remember. Information that you could very easily learn when you were younger in the past may not require greater effort, may require greater effort for you to remember it now. Researchers find that older adults may not spontaneously use effective strategies for memory performance. You gotta focus your attention on the task and find some means of encoding the information. Encoding may include paying attention to something, reasoning it through, analyzing it. Or associating it with something that you already know and elaborating on the detail. It's organizing new information and giving it meaning in order to solidly to put it into your long-term memory. Another common complaint is that patients complain that they can't retrieve the information as easily as they were in the past. It becomes increasingly difficult to access familiar names and vocabulary words on demand. For example, you're talking to your friend about a new television show. When trying to remember the title, you realize that you cannot remember. The more frustrated you get, the less likely you are to be able to come up with the name. So instead of giving yourself the time that you need and the cues that you need to remember the name of the movie, you find your attention focused more on the frustration of forgetting, which further decreases your chance of remembering. So if you relax and you avoid the frustration from entering your short-term memory, the information will often come to you. Also, the feeling of the word being at the tip of your tongue occurs more frequently as you become older. Many times, you will replace the word with something different as the word you are trying to remember is unable to be recalled at that moment. This frustration of forgetting leads to the anxiety, and the anxiety further blocks the recall process. So next time you find yourself searching for the needed name or word, try to relax, take a deep breath, and see if you can access the information by thinking of related items. It will eventually come to you. You all had this happen before. You're unable to impress your friend by recalling the name of a famous person in history while you are watching the 7 p.m. evening show of Jeopardy. And then you go to lay down at night and the name comes up. It happened to us all, and I'm sure it all happened to you. Also, the inability to recall as well as we had in the past. It takes longer for the information to be recalled from our long-term memory. Studies have shown that older adults take more time on exam to recall needed information from long-term memory than younger people. These studies were done by giving older adults more time to complete the same exact test that was given to a younger adult, and they observed the performance greatly improved. In untimed tests of recall, older adults perform comparably to younger ones, if not better. So give yourself a little additional time and see if you can come up with the desired information that you need. An example of this would be when you learn a new recipe to bake a cake, and you bake non-stop for a whole week and have the recipe memorized. You get tired of baking, you decide to take a month off, now you decide to bake another cake, and realize you can't remember the steps to baking the cake, or find the recipe. So, with expertise and familiarity, this compensates and allows you to recall certain information. So the more experience you get, and the more familiarity you obtain in baking a cake, the easier it becomes to recall. So if you just learn to bake a cake, compared to a person that's been baking the cake their whole life, the person baking their cake the whole life will be less likely to forget how to bake the cake. And with the accumulation of knowledge and wisdom come with age. World knowledge accumulates with age. World knowledge is defined as a pool of information acquired over a lifetime from both educational and everyday experiences. So every day, whether you realize it or not, the experiences you take will be accumulated into your knowledge. In testing, older adults do better in knowledge and vocabulary. Memory and experience are the basis of wisdom. Although it takes greater effort to learn something new, older adults have the wisdom to determine what new information is important to them and what information is able to be thrown out or forgotten. So many factors affect the memory process. Impact of these factors is likely to be greater as you become older, because older people often experience more of the negative influences at one time. As we go through many of the factors, think about what factor might be affecting you, and then we will go over the solution on what can help you out. Awareness of possible causes of memory problems can lead to solutions, and we will go through a few of them. So solution can lead to improved memory. So you guys ready? Let's begin with factor number one. Factor number one, which is problems associated with attention. Inadequate attention is not paying enough attention to details that can eliminate some of the instances of forgetting. So you need to ask yourself, when is it really important for me to pay attention? And try to resolve to focus your awareness on the task at hand. Example of inadequate attention: let's say you're on the phone while you are watching television. You become so engaged in your conversation that you forget what just happened on television. Also, a distraction. The amount of information, again, that can enter your short-term memory is very limited, as only 5 to 7 bits of information can be remembered at one time. So any new sound, sight, or thought may distract you and displace what is currently in your short-term memory. An example of this would be, I'm sure we have all done this before, when we go into another room and we forget what we went for. Like that time you go into the kitchen to get the mail, and then another thought enters your mind, and you forgot why you even went into the kitchen in the first place. Or the time you're driving on the LIE, and another thought fully occupies your working memory, like what you need to do for the party next week. And then you realize that you forgot to get off the exit that you needed to get off. And I'm sure this happened to us all. So what can we do about our problem with attention? Older adults find it more difficult to pay attention to more than one thing at one time. So try to recognize the limitation of your short-term memory and cut out any distractions when possible. When you're talking on the phone making plans for dinner, focus only on talking on the phone and making plans for dinner. When you're watching television, focus your attention on watching television and give your undivided attention to situations that could potentially be dangerous, especially driving, cooking, and taking your medication. So factor number 2 that can affect memory is negative expectations. Older adults are more pessimistic about their ability to remember. When you expect that you are going to fail at something, that expectation is likely to increase the possibility of failure. So when you get frustrated and you yell out, "I just can't remember anything anymore," this is frustration, and this is a negative expectation that is likely to occur. Younger people attribute forgetting as the lack of effort, where older people tend to just think that they just can't remember it anymore. Negative expectation about the memory are likely to cause the older adult to put less effort into remembering. They're going to avoid tasks that requires memory, and they're going to feel very anxious when their memories are tested in daily life. An example would be a person who stopped attending gatherings for fear of embarrassment that they cannot remember the people's name. They think that they cannot remember their names anymore, instead of trying to learn new techniques. to have a more positive outcome. So what can we do to solve this factor? We can avoid negative expectation. We can be positive. We're going to try something new. In the case that I gave you just before, with the person not attending gathering because they can't remember the name, try new techniques such as reviewing a list of the people who will be at certain event prior to the gathering. Factor number 3 that can affect our memory as we get older, and I'm sure we all have this, is stress, which makes it impossible to pay adequate attention to learning new information. You become unable to concentrate on the details that you want to recall. You're unable to relax long enough to let the memory surface. Remember what I said before, where you got to give yourself more time in order for recall to work. And you'll become more likely to forget things when you are under major stress. So, solution for number 3 would be to find activities that decrease your stress level. Understand that your worry of forgetting is only another stress that is displacing other information from your short-term memory. So avoid certain situations that are very stressful. It will be best to do what you need to do before doing anything else. For example, your family is coming from out of town to your home next week. You know you will be running late because you have a doctor's appointment, but you tell your family that you will leave the key underneath the doormat. A week goes by, you're at your doctor, and you realize you forgot to leave the key, and you become very stressed about this, and you are unable to focus on your encounter with the doctor. Keep in mind that this isn't something you can control while you're at the doctor. So don't stress out over the thing that you cannot control, and this will allow you to focus your attention where it needs to be at that moment, which is with your encounter with your doctor. Factor 4 that can affect the memory is depression. Ongoing depression is not normal, and it can affect your memory. Everyone feels down off and on during their lifetime, but ongoing depression is not normal and can affect your memory. Symptoms of depression many of you have seen on TV includes sleep disturbances, loss of interest in the activities you usually enjoy, is feeling guilty for things that you cannot control, and you're unable to concentrate. You have anxiety thought, and in the most severe cases you have suicidal or homicidal ideation. So what does depression affect? It affects your motivation. It makes you not care about remembering the information that was once important to you. It affects your concentration, as you're not able to concentrate, and you become unable to focus on the task at hand. It affects your perception. You may view a few instances of forgetting as a sign that you can't remember anything at all. So what can we do to solve factor number 4? When you notice signs of depression, see your doctor immediately for an evaluation. Depression can be treated by combining medication and counseling. Make sure to seek help early, and you want to involve your family and friends for support. So factor 5 on what can affect your memory as we become older is inactivity. It's the lack of mental stimulation. Use it or lose it, which is often applied to memory functioning, although there is no clear evidence. But keeping mentally active and using memory skills may enhance your ability to remember. Some examples of mental stimulation is attending library sessions, like you are all here today doing. It's participating in discussing groups. It's doing crossword puzzles, watching television shows like Jeopardy, and answering the questions. It's learning new activities, such as, for many of you who haven't had a computer growing up, it's learning how to use a computer. It's reading a new book, or even reading the daily newspaper. Other areas of inactivity is the lack of social interaction. With a lack of social interaction, there is less incentive to focus and organize your thought, and there is less need to remember. In social interaction, you have the opportunity to talk about the week's events, which reinforces the memory of what you have done and learned. It helps gives you something new to think about, and this can eventually lead to trigger old memories. Inactivity also includes the physical activity aspect. There is no clear evidence that physical activity is directly linked to improving your memory. However, we know that exercise can influence other factors of health, such as fitness and improved self-esteem, which can indirectly improve your memory. So how can we solve the problem number 5 of inactivity? Don't spend your days alone. For even the simplest of activity, like taking a ride to the post office or going to the grocery shop, go with a neighbor, go with a friend. If the distance isn't too far, get some walking in. Limit your time on the television and be creative and perform new activities every day. So spend no days alone and invite your neighbors over, even if it's just for a cup of coffee and for cake at night. Problem number 6, which can affect our memory, is the lack of organization in daily life. Many instances of forgetting and losing things can be traced to a disorganized lifestyle. When you don't have a systematic way to keep track of your activity, you can and you will forget, especially as we become older. If you think that some of your instances of forgetting are due to a lack of organization, you may want to develop some new organizational habits. You will really enjoy the next few slides as I talk about the solution to your lack of organization in daily life. Keeping organization in life can best be solved by getting organized. So choose an area in your life where you think getting organized will help you remember. For example, when I thought about this question on solution to this problem, I wrote something down on my notepad, which I keep at my desk. I listed a couple of examples, like keeping track of my keys, which is also seen in the title, Where Did I Put My Keys? So how can you solve your problem of keeping track of your keys? The first thing you need to do is write down the problem, then write down a possible solution you can make for the problem. So on my paper, I wrote down for a solution that I will put a hook in the hallway. And whenever I get home, I will put that key on the hook. And when I leave my house, I will take that key off the hook. But you can come up with your own solution and then evaluate it within a few weeks. Remembering what I need at a grocery store. Remembering what I need at a grocery store. Many of us have tried to make a list, but even making the list before we go, we still get home and we realize that we have no eggs in the house. So it's not that you forgot to buy the eggs at the grocery store. It becomes a problem that you forgot to put it on the list. So let's come up with a solution. I had to borrow this from my dad. But anytime we finish an item, we write down on the list, and the list becomes ongoing until the next trip to the grocery store. And now if you really want to be fancy and make sure that you never forget your coupons, make the food list on an envelope. And when you see a coupon for the item on the list, you place the coupon in the envelope. So on your trip to the food store, you will remember what you need to buy and remember the coupon that goes with it. And honestly, this will even further improve your memory and your mood, because after all, we all love using coupons. Coupons save us money, saving money makes us happy, and being happy improves your memory, and the cycle continues. So one or two more problems that I wrote down was remembering to send birthday cards to family and friends. Because you all know, as we become older, the more birthdays we need to remember, as the addition to the family gets bigger. So come up with a solution, write it down. When I was writing my solution, I actually thought about a calendar to keep next to my desk, and I highlight all the days where birthday is to be celebrated. And when the year is over and you get a new calendar, so just transfer it over. Well, what about what I need to do to take out? How about remembering when to take out the garbage? Perhaps you can take a look outside and notice that on certain days when the garbage men are going to come, you're going to have all your neighbors placing out their garbage, and this can trigger you to remember when you need to take out the trash. Have a friend call you every Monday and Thursday if you know the garbage men will be coming on Tuesday and Saturday, and make this a weekly conversation that you have with certain neighbors. Also, in remembering what you need to take with you every time you go out, it's always good to have a ready-to-go box. So in your ready-to-go box, you can put everything that you need to take with you. And this can be another solution on where did I put my keys. Perhaps you want to put it in your ready-to-go box, where you put your keys in it, where you put your wallet in it, and anything that you may need when you go out, even like your phone. Like Amex says, don't leave home without it. So I'm going to end part 2 now, and we'll begin part 3 shortly.